One minute I am the sales champion, the next I am being kicked out of my own office. My boss called me useless, and my girlfriend dumped me for a guy with a better car. I had nothing left but a broken old sedan and a heart full of absolute rage. Then the world shifted. A voice echoed in my head, the full career experience system. It is a simple game. Experience a career, complete the tasks, and reap rewards beyond imagination. Most people spend a lifetime climbing the corporate ladder. I just have to change my job. My first mission? Become a DD driver. It sounds simple, but the stakes are completely different. This is not your average rideshare. The system does not believe in minimum wage. One completed order and suddenly I have 10 million yuan sitting in my bank account. Then come the keys to a Pagani Zonda, $28 million of pure carbon fiber. Imagine the look on my ex-boss's face when she sees me in the underground parking lot, or the shock of the rich kids who think their Lamborghinis make them the kings of town. I am not just playing a role, I am buying the entire city one job at a time. I just claimed the Peninsula Hotel, now I am the owner of the most luxurious spot around. It is a strange feeling watching people beg for discounts in a building that I own. From a fired salesman to a hidden mogul, my life has become a living cheat code. But the more I earn, the more eyes are on me. The game is just getting started. I have luxury cars, 5-star hotels, and a long list of people to put in their place. The rules of the world do not apply to me anymore because I own the game now. So, let us go back to the moment it all started, the day I lost everything, and the moment I realized that being a loser was the best thing that ever happened. Strap in. This is how I turned my miserable life into a literal gold mine. I was doing everything right, hitting my targets and even becoming the sales champion last month at Chaoyang Group. But that didn't matter to my manager, Lily. Without warning, she told me to pack my things and leave. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that I had worked tirelessly without a single day off for months. The truth was simple. I didn't play her game of giving expensive gifts to stay in her good graces. She didn't care about my performance, only her own pockets. She dismissed me like I was nothing and walked away. For a moment, I felt the weight of the world. I had a broken old car and almost no money. Then, something impossible happened. A voice echoed in my mind. A system had finally chosen me. It was a career experience system. After figuring out the rules, I realized my life was about to change. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A bank notification showed a balance of 10 million yuan. I could hardly believe it. Along with the money, I was registered as a driver. The system was giving me a completely fresh start. Then came the call from my girlfriend, Lu Cici. She didn't even hesitate to break up with me right then. She called me a waste of youth, complaining that I could not even afford to buy her a decent phone. It stung for a second, but then I realized I didn't need her. I just hung up and moved on. As I left the office, my colleagues looked at me with pity, knowing I was too honest for this place. In the elevator, I found a package. Inside were the keys to a Pagani, a car most people only dream of. I rushed to the garage, eager to see my new ride. But as I arrived, I saw someone familiar. It was President Ji Qingyan, the head of the company. She looked stunning in her beige dress and high heels. She was standing by her Maserati, looking distressed because her luxury car would not start. I was surprised she even remembered me, as I was just a low-level employee in the sales department. I offered her a ride to her meeting at the Housing and Urban Rural Development Bureau. She hesitated but eventually agreed, not knowing that I had just been fired from her own company. Just as we were about to head to my car, a voice interrupted us from behind. A man stepped forward, offering to take her instead and trying to push me out of the picture. I was with Ji Qingyan when a man named Li Yunhang approached us. He is the young owner of the navigation group. He has been obsessively pursuing her for months, and he clearly thought he had an opening since her car broke down. He tried to flaunt his wealth by offering her a ride in his $200 million Lamborghini Hurricane. I had a feeling this was not a coincidence. I suspect he actually sabotaged her car just to play the hero. To my surprise, Ji Qingyan shut him down completely. She told him she would rather ride in my domestic car. Li Yunheng could not believe it. He started mocking me, calling my car a piece of junk not worth a tire. As we walked toward the parking area, we spotted a silver Pagani Zonda. It is a masterpiece worth 28 million. Li tried to use the car to make me look small again, claiming no one like me could ever own it. I did not say a word. I just pressed the key in my pocket, and the Pagani doors swung open automatically. The look on their faces was priceless. Ji Qingyan was stunned, and Li Yunheng looked like he had been slapped. I gave Li a meaningful pat on the shoulder, essentially telling him that his Lamborghini was nothing compared to this. Ji Qingyan got in, though she was still confused about how a simple sales employee could afford such a luxury car. I decided to have a little fun. I told her I am actually a rich heir just experiencing ordinary life. I even joked that my next career move was to drive for Didi to see how the other half lives. She laughed it off, but then I showed her my phone. I actually own the Didi ride-sharing platform. She was speechless. To test it out, she downloaded the app and placed an order, which I immediately accepted. I stepped on the gas, and the roar of the engine startled her. It was a powerful start to my journey. People stared as we cruised through the city. A Pagani Zonda is hard to miss, and I could feel the envy. After dropping her off, we exchanged WeChat contacts. She was much more polite now that I was not her employee. Just as I drove away, the system notification sounded in my mind. It was time to see what happened next. I couldn't believe my eyes. The system just dropped 50 million RMB into my account for completing a single order. With 10 million already saved, I was suddenly sitting on 60 million. It was an absolute rush of adrenaline. But the money wasn't the only reward. I also had the Peninsula Hotel, one of Shanghai's top 5-star luxury hotels, to claim. I used to only admire this place from a distance. Now, I was walking through the front doors as the owner. As I stepped inside, a familiar voice caught my attention. It was Lin Yi, my ex-girlfriend, sounding happier than ever. She was with Unjustly, a guy from a wealthy timber family. He drove a Mercedes and had the status she wanted. Cici had dumped me the moment she realized Unjustly could provide the luxurious lifestyle she craved for her birthday. The moment she spotted me, her expression shifted from joy to pure disgust. She thought I was here to stalk her. She snapped at me, claiming that even if I knelt and begged, there was no way we would ever get back together. Unjie stepped in, wrapping his arm around her. He mockingly called me a loser and told me to stop bothering her. His friends joined in, laughing at my old Xiaoli car. They told me I didn't belong in a high-end place like this. Cici sneered, asking if I had come here to eat. She laughed at the idea of me affording a single meal. Unjie began bragging about his connections, claiming the hotel manager Wang Tianlong gave him special discounts because of his father. Just then, manager Wang arrived with a group of staff. Unjie stepped forward, eager to show off his high status. But instead of a warm greeting, Wang Tianlong shoved him aside without a second thought, ignoring him completely. To everyone's absolute shock, the manager bowed 90 degrees to me and addressed me as Boss Lin. I could see the sheer shock on Lin Yi's face when she realized I was actually the president of the Peninsula Hotel. She probably felt like a complete fool for dismissing me, knowing the hotel's massive annual revenue and my new status. I calmly greeted the hotel's management, letting them know that from this moment on, we were officially colleagues. The executives were stunned. They could not believe the new owner of such a prestigious establishment was someone as young as me. I was led to the conference room on the 5th floor, where a mountain of financial statements awaited my review. Honestly, I had no interest in digging through boring paperwork. I decided to trust the current staff to keep things running. I told them I saw sincerity in their eyes. My trust touched them, and they vowed to work their hardest for me. Just as I was about to leave, a panicked employee burst in. A guest in room 724 wanted to file a complaint. Apparently, a VIP had snatched the Mercedes-Benz she wanted to rent. I decided to handle the situation personally. When I opened the door to room 7004, I met Gu Jingshu. She seemed completely frozen by my appearance. I apologized for the inconvenience and offered her a Pagani instead, since it was a step up from a Mercedes. She was hesitant at first, admitting she could not afford such a luxury car, but I offered to drive her myself. She agreed, and after a short wait, she emerged wearing a stunning light blue skirt that highlighted her figure. As we walked toward the entrance, I noticed a commotion. Lin Yi and her friends were waiting for me outside. They actually thought they could apologize and win me back, believing I still had feelings for them. In a desperate attempt to impress me, they were actually using tissues to wipe down my Pagani without my permission. I stepped out of the hotel with Gu Jingshu by my side and caught them red-handed. Now, things are about to get interesting. I stood there as Lin Yi and her friends tried to play the helpful act, pretending to clean my car. Cici tried to brush off Gu Jingshu, assuming she was just my secretary who was no longer needed in my life. I wasn't having it. I asked her which part of Jingshu looked like a secretary, glancing at the obvious curves. Cici was stunned. I told her bluntly that Jingshu's figure was far superior to hers, leaving her speechless and humiliated. I could tell Gu Jingshu was shocked. She probably couldn't believe I had turned on Cici so quickly and decisively. Cici tried to fight back, bragging about her private skills, but Jingshu didn't back down, matching her momentum. I had no time for the drama. I simply told them to move, opened the Pagani's doors, and drove away. As we sped off, Jingshu stared at the interior of the car. Even she knew this was on another level. She quickly tried to explain that her comments were just to spite Cici and that she wasn't a casual person. I told her I didn't care about her personal details right now. To me, she was just my driver. She seemed a bit disappointed, which was fair. We barely knew each other, so I wasn't about to fall for her. We headed toward the Jingshu Hotel where one of her former classmates was celebrating a wedding. I realized then why she had insisted on a fancy car. She wanted to save face in front of her peers. At the hotel, a group of girls were already gossiping, mocking Jingshu for lying about having a rich boyfriend. They didn't believe her for a second, laughing about how she probably still took the bus every single day. Then, the silver Pagani Zonda rolled up. The atmosphere shifted instantly as every head turned toward the supercar. The guests were in awe. They couldn't believe someone with a $10 million car was arriving at this wedding. When Jingshu stepped out of the car, her classmates were stunned. Their mockery turned into immediate curiosity and envy. Jingshu played it cool, pretending I was just a friend who happened to be free to give her a lift. I nodded and drove away. I had used her as a shield before, so this was a fair trade. Shortly after, my phone rang. It was my landlord Wu Jinlin, and I knew exactly why she was calling. Usually her calls filled me with dread because they always meant I was behind on my rent payments. But this time, I felt nothing but calm. Rent was no longer an issue with the wealth I now possessed. She roared at me for being 18 days late. I told her not to worry and that I would pay immediately. I had no intention of staying in that dilapidated old apartment. I owned the Peninsula Hotel, so why suffer? I decided to go back one last time just to pack my things and leave that place behind forever. Meanwhile, my landlord was at home with her daughter, Zhao Jingjing, a quiet girl preparing for civil service exams. Jingjing actually defended me, telling her mother that I was a decent and motivated man. But her mother dismissed it. To her, I was just a handsome wage earner who couldn't provide a stable future. She warned her daughter not to get any ideas about me, thinking I was far beneath their social standing. I could tell Jingjing and her mother were judging me. In a city like Zhonghai, where houses cost millions, I was just a poor guy. Between my low salary and my beat-up Shally car, it was clear I didn't fit into their idea of a successful partner. I stopped by to settle my rent with Mrs. Wu. I told her I had been let go from my job and was now a freelancer. I transferred 4,000 yuan, paying for 2 months instead of 1. I wanted a clean break since I would not be living there. Mrs. Wu did not seem sad to see me go. In fact, she was secretly thrilled to find a tenant who could actually afford rent. As Jingjing helped me pack, I realized I did not have much. The only thing I truly cared about was my old orphanage quilt. To others, it was just old fabric, but it held extraordinary meaning for me. Everything else in my life could be replaced with money. As we headed downstairs, Mrs. Wu asked what I planned to do. I joked that I would drive for Didi just to avoid starving. Suddenly, Jingjing spotted a silver supercar parked in our crumbling community. She did not know the brand, but she knew it was expensive. I pressed the key, and the gull-wing doors of my new Pagani swung open. The look on their faces was absolutely priceless. They were stunned. When I mentioned the car cost over 20 million, I could see their entire perception of me shift instantly. I teased them, saying my office job was just for the experience and that I was actually a second-generation rich heir. I left them standing there in the dust. For once, the power dynamic had completely flipped, and I enjoyed every second of it. Mrs. Wu told Jingjing not to waste her time. She admitted that while I was not worthy of her before, she was not worthy of me. I drove to the Peninsula Hotel where Wang Tianlong had already prepared a presidential suite. This was the luxury I deserved. After a long day of dealing with the system and my old life, a hot bath and a luxury room were exactly what I needed. My phone rang. It was Wang Ying, a beautiful colleague who had always been kind to me during my time at the company. She invited me to a farewell dinner at a restaurant called Yipanju. I generously offered to treat everyone to the meal. Just as I was relaxing, I get a message from Ji Qingyan. She needed a ride from the construction bureau. Picking her up means more rewards for my system. I did not hesitate for a second. It was time to get back to work. I got dressed and headed to the Housing and Construction Bureau, where Ji Qingyan was already waiting for me. As she got into the car, a faint fragrance lingered in the air. I asked her to place a Didi order. I told her I needed the money to survive now that I was unemployed, which made her laugh at my seriousness. She probably thought I was just experiencing the hardships of life after being fired from my high-performing sales job. Just then, my system chimed in. A new task appeared. Pick up 2 beauties with a score of 85 or above. The system marked the mission as half complete, confirming that Ji Qingyan definitely met those high beauty standards. On the way, she asked why I was actually fired, since I had been the sales champion only a month ago. I kept my answer vague. With the system in my life, the petty drama of my old job no longer mattered. Her phone rang, and I noticed her expression sour. She was stressed about finding a venue for an upcoming press conference. Every 5-star hotel in the city was fully booked. She was desperate and didn't know how to handle the situation. I suggested the Peninsula Hotel, the most prestigious establishment in Shanghai, but she told me I was dreaming. She explained that the Peninsula doesn't take reservations easily, even for a company president like herself. I told her that life is full of surprises and proposed a bet that we could secure a room there. If we failed, she wouldn't have to pay for the ride. If we succeeded, she had to do a special favor. I asked her to do an S-squat, a popular pose among streamers. Confident it was impossible, she agreed to the bet. As we arrived at the hotel, the staff recognized me. I gave them a look to ensure they kept my identity secret. To Ji Qingyan's surprise, the front desk was incredibly polite and immediately led us to a private reception room. She was confused because she had never received such warm treatment at the Peninsula before in her entire life. Suddenly, manager Wang Tianlong arrived, greeting her with an enthusiasm that left her completely stunned. I watched as Ji Qingyan greeted manager Wang Tianlong at the Peninsula Hotel. She was nervous, expecting the same cold shoulder as before, but Wang was acting completely different. I had already given him a strict reminder to cooperate fully and be extremely enthusiastic. I couldn't let a stubborn manager get in the way of my plans to win over a beautiful woman like her. Ji Qingyan asked for the auditorium for a press conference, fully expecting to be rejected again. She didn't know I was pulling the strings. Wang didn't just agree. He gave her total flexibility on the date and even waived the deposit entirely without a second thought. The look of pure shock on her face was priceless. She actually believed a miracle had happened out of nowhere. As we left, Wang's deputy warned him about breaching a contract with Yungkai Group, which would cost them a fortune in damages. Wang didn't care. He told his deputy that paying 10 times the penalty was better than risking my anger. Back in the car, Ji Qingyan was beaming, calling me her lucky star. It was the perfect time to collect on her promise. Her face turned bright red when I reminded her, but she knew she couldn't cheat me after I helped her so much. I stepped on the gas, my Pagani roaring like a beast as we sped toward her home in the Yunshui Villa area. The security guards at the gate were stunned to see the car. A Pagani is a rare sight even in this neighborhood. They immediately began gossiping, convinced that the cold President Ji had finally been won over by a super-rich second-generation heir. We finally arrived at her villa. Ji Qingyan seemed to be bracing herself for the penalty she thought I wanted from her. She mentioned something about doing S-squats, looking quite flustered. However, I had something entirely different on my mind at that moment. I held up my phone and asked if I should pay for the order, leaving her completely confused once again. I might drive a Pagani, but I still believe in saving every penny. Ji Qingyan thought my frugality with the taxi fare was ridiculous. She laughed it off, but I told her that small things add up if I want to buy a house in China overseas. We eventually arrived at her villa. It was a modern, clean place with a subtle scent of jasmine lingering in the air. After she served some tea, the room fell into a heavy, ambiguous silence. It was time to settle our little agreement. Ji Qingyan had agreed to perform the S-squats from that video. She looked nervous, but she started the movement anyway. Watching her in that tight-wrapped skirt and black silk, I realized those internet anchors couldn't even come close to her. I was just starting to appreciate the view when a voice suddenly interrupted us, freezing us both in our tracks. It was her father, Ji Antai. Of all the times for him to walk through that door, it had to be now. Ji Qingyan panicked and tried to claim I was her new yoga instructor teaching her some advanced, non-traditional moves. Her father wasn't buying it. He questioned why a yoga instructor would just sit back and drink tea while she worked. He started grilling me about my background. When I told him I drove for Didi, he looked at me with pure disbelief. But then he remembered the sports car parked outside. He suddenly decided I was a rich kid playing a commoner. In his mind, that made me a man of character, and he immediately decided I was the perfect match for his daughter. He even invited me to his upcoming birthday party, basically forcing me into the role of her boyfriend in one conversation. I tried to decline, but he was far too excited. He left us to our interests, leaving Ji Qingyan completely embarrassed. I had to leave for a colleague's farewell banquet, meaning we had to leave the rest of those squats for another time. As I left, Ji Qingyan contacted her secretary. She wanted to dig into my records and find out why I was dismissed. I headed over to Yipenju, arriving a few minutes late due to the unexpected interruption from the father. My colleagues from the sales department were already there. Wang Ying, a charming woman who always looked after me, greeted me. She had already saved a seat for me right next to her, welcoming me into the group with a warm smile. I smiled and thanked Sister Wang Ying. It was my farewell party, though being fired felt a bit strange. Most of the women in the office liked me. Wang Ying truly believed I deserved the sales director position. But then there was Huang Yue. He didn't hide his jealousy or his blatant support for Li Jiangdong. Li Jiangdong had been the top salesman until I arrived. Now that I was gone, he was back on top. They toasted to Dongyi's upcoming promotion, practically rubbing his victory in my face while I sat there. Dongyi pretended to be kind, but his words cut deep. He reminded everyone that I was an orphan. He even offered me a security job through his connections. The other men laughed, treating my failure like a joke. I just kept smiling. When asked about my future, I told them I planned to drive for Didi. They mocked my beat-up Jolly car, wondering how any passenger would tolerate it. I just let them keep talking. Suddenly, the hotel manager walked in. He was looking for the owner of a Pagani Zonda parked downstairs. The room went silent. A Pagani is a supercar worth millions. My colleagues rushed to the window in awe. Li Jiangdong told the manager we were just ordinary workers who couldn't afford such a car, dismissing the possibility. I spoke up, asking what was wrong with the vehicle. Huang Yue laughed, telling me to stop dreaming. I looked them in the eye and told them the Pagani was mine. The silence that followed was priceless. I pulled out the keys and shook them in their faces. The look of utter shock on them was everything. They were dizzy with confusion. How could a guy with a beat-up Xiaoli own a 20 million yuan supercar? When Dongyi asked why I would drive a taxi if I was this rich, I told him I enjoy experiencing life. I left Li Jiangdong standing there, completely stunned by the unexpected turn of events. I didn't stay to enjoy his confusion. As I walked downstairs, I saw a crowd gathered around my car, their faces filled with pure envy and jealousy. I ignored the whispers about my wealth and called out to my colleagues, letting them know I was heading out. Wang Ying decided to leave with me. She was the most beautiful woman at our company and wanted to experience the ride. As we drove off in my supercar, she asked how an orphan like me suddenly became so rich. I simply claimed inheritance. Then I mentioned my new ride-sharing business. I encouraged her to place an order to help me complete a system mission. The system required me to transport beauties with a charm score of 85 or higher to earn a special reward. I waited for the confirmation, but nothing happened. To my shock, the system rated Wang Ying at only 84 points. I was speechless. One single point was standing between me and my reward. I had to find a way to boost her score. I curiously asked her if there was any way to enhance a woman's charm. She laughed, calling it a compulsory course. She reached into her bag and showed me 2 pairs of stockings, asking which color I preferred. I chose black. She put them on right there in the car. The change in her appearance was immediate and undeniably striking. I asked the system to scan her again. This time, her score hit 85 and the mission was finally complete. The reward was incredible. I earned 100,000 proficiency points and a villa in the prestigious Kyushu Pavilion. I was thrilled. Kyushu Pavilion is the most exclusive luxury estate in Shanghai, far beyond what most rich people can afford. I focused on driving and dropped Wang Ying off at her home, completing my 3rd order for the day. Just as I was leaving, she invited me inside, mentioning that her husband was away on a business trip. I told her it wouldn't work today. I still had orders to run, so I would have to visit another time. It was already 7 o'clock, but I knew how sales worked. Some staff stayed late, so I rushed to the Juzhou Pavilion. Juzhou Pavilion is the crown jewel of Shanghai, featuring 9 magnificent villas that face both the river and the sea. As I looked at the scenery, I felt a surge of satisfaction, wondering which of these luxury homes the system gave me. When I walked into the sales hall, I was greeted by a familiar face. It was my former colleague, Zhang Mengyu. Back in the day, she had pursued me relentlessly, but I rejected her. Now, she looked at me with pure disdain. She assumed I was here to beg for a job since I had been fired, mocking my old car and poor living situation. She laughed in my face, claiming I could not even afford a toilet in this neighborhood, let alone a villa. I did not bother arguing. I just calmly asked to speak with her manager, which only made her more arrogant. Suddenly, manager Wang Hui arrived. She completely ignored Zhang Mengyu and greeted me with the utmost respect and humility. Zhang Mengyu tried to warn the manager that I was a broke failure, but the manager shut her down instantly. Then came the reveal that left her speechless. I had not bought just one villa. I had bought all 9 of them. The entire Juzhou Pavilion was now my private territory. I was no longer just a buyer, but the sole owner. Manager Wang handed over 9 file bags containing the property rights and keys, apologizing for the poor reception I received. I left the stunned Zhang Mengyu behind, placing the documents in my Pagani and heading back to the hotel. As I settled in for the night, my phone rang. It was Wang Ying, calling with more gossip about my former co-workers. I was caught off guard when Wang Ying called to tell me that Yu Lili and Li Jiangdong had been fired. It felt too coincidental. I had just been let go, and now my 2 biggest rivals were gone as well. I messaged Ji Qingyan to confirm, and she admitted she fired them just to help me vent some of my anger. Since the head of sales position was now vacant, I suggested she look into Wang Ying as a suitable candidate. The next morning, I drove my Pagani to Yunshui Villa. The security guards didn't even ask for my ID anymore. Ji Qingyan looked stunning in a long skirt. She had a regal presence that commanded attention the moment she appeared. I am currently working on a system task to earn 5-5-star reviews for 20 proficiency points. I am close. To keep things official, Ji Qingyan placed a ride request through the app, and I grabbed the order immediately. When we arrived at the company, Wang Ying saw us together and was shocked to see me acting as her driver. Just then, Yu, Lily, and Li Jiangdong appeared, carrying boxes of their belongings. They looked absolutely defeated and miserable. After dropping her off, Ji Qingyan teased me, offering a 5-star review in exchange for some intimate favors later. I refused to be blackmailed, but she gave me the review anyway. That brought my progress to 4 out of 5. I wanted to finish the system task before heading to the mall for clothes, so I accepted one more order. The app sent me to Tianye home. It was a short trip, only a few minutes away from my location. At the destination, I overheard a beautiful young woman named Xia Xinyu arguing with her father in their apartment. Xia Xinyu is a famous outdoor anchor, and her father is desperately trying to pressure her into a blind date. I am just a regular Didi driver trying to make a living when my phone rings with a very strange request. A passenger named Xia Xinyu called to ask my age. When I told her I was 24, she sounded incredibly relieved. It turns out she had lied to her parents about having a boyfriend to avoid a blind date her father arranged. She offered me a deal, pretend to be her boyfriend to fool her parents, and she would give me a 5-star rating. For the sake of my driver rating, I agreed. I headed over to her place at Tianye Homestead to start the act. The moment Xinyu opened the door, she looked completely stunned. I guess my looks were a bit more than she expected. Her mother was immediately thrilled, pulling me inside with a huge smile, clearly impressed by my appearance and presence. However, the mood shifted quickly when they asked what I did for a living. I told them honestly that I am a driver. They hoped I was a pilot or a chauffeur for some high-ranking official, but I corrected them. I drive for Didi. The excitement vanished instantly. Her father looked disgusted, wondering how a rideshare driver could possibly support his daughter. Xinyu jumped in to save me, claiming I was actually quite wealthy and planning to start my own business soon. Her parents softened slightly, deciding to keep me as a backup option since I was at least easy on the eyes. They decided to bring me along to a colleague's party, hoping to get to know me better and judge my character. I had to break the news to them though. My car is a 2-seater and cannot possibly fit 4 people. I told them my car only had 2 seats, and that was where things went south. The Xia family looked at me with pure disbelief. To them, 2 seats meant I rode a motorcycle. Xia Hongyuan was appalled. He couldn't imagine his daughter being seen with someone who rode a bike. His wife joined in, claiming a motorcycle rider had no future and would only bring them shame. Or Xinyu looked like she wanted to disappear. She thought my looks would save her, but this was too much. I didn't mind the insults. I just wanted my 5-star rating once the ride was over. As we walked outside, a sharp whistle echoed through the neighborhood, stopping the Xia family in their tracks. A Pagani, a supercar worth over 20 million, pulled up right in front of us. I watched their jaws drop as I casually opened the gull-wing doors and climbed inside. Xinyu was completely bewildered. She asked me why I was driving a sports car if I was a biker. I simply reminded her that sports cars are 2-seaters. It is basic common sense, really. The transformation in her father was instant. His anger vanished, replaced by a desperate, flattering smile. He suddenly begged me to stay for dinner, but I had other things to do and declined. Xinyu climbed into the passenger seat, her eyes wide as she took in the opulent interior. On our way to Times Square, she asked why someone with my wealth would still drive for Didi. I told her I wanted to experience life. Just eating and waiting to die isn't living. She was genuinely impressed, noting that most rich heirs are just obsessed with their money. Since she is a female anchor, Xinyu asked if she could start a live broadcast from my car. I agreed, provided she kept her promise about the 5-star review after the trip. As she went live, her viewers began mocking her, assuming she was in some cheap, budget vehicle. She fired back, claiming she was in a luxury car they had never seen in their entire lives. The chat laughed, calling her a liar and demanding proof of the car logo. Xinyu slowly turned the camera toward the steering wheel, and the entire live room went dead silent. I sat behind the wheel of my Pagani Zonda, feeling the raw power of the machine as we cruised through the city. Beside me, Xia Xinyu was beaming. She was live streaming our ride, her eyes sparkling with a mix of pride and excitement. I could see the chat scrolling by rapidly. Some viewers were in awe, while others claimed the car was just a rental. Xia Yu was practically vibrating with indignation on my behalf, but I didn't mind. The noise of the internet is just background music. We soon pulled into Times Square, one of the most luxurious shopping malls in Shanghai. The crowd was already staring. As I looked for a parking spot, I noticed other drivers freezing in place. Even those in sports cars didn't dare move. I overheard a couple in a Panamera. They were arguing until they realized my car was worth over 20 million. It is funny how the world changes when you drive something that makes a luxury car look like a piece of junk. Just as I parked, my system chimed. I had earned 20 proficiency points and a massive reward for completing my task. I now owned the Shanghai International Circuit, the finest racing track in the country, and gained master driving skills. My phone rang shortly after. It was the circuit manager, Joe Haitao, wanting to finalize the handover of my new property. I told him I would be there in the afternoon. I had some shopping to do first and wanted to test my skills. We stepped into the mall, and Xia Yu looked nervous. High-end luxury is not something she is used to navigating. My first stop was the Apple Store. My current phone was a cheap domestic model that had started to lag. I pointed to the top-of-the-line iPhone 11 Pro Max with 512 gigabytes of storage without a second thought. Xia Yu tried to pull me aside, whispering that I could save $1,000 by ordering the phone online. I just shook my head. When you have the means, convenience is worth far more than a small discount. As the clerk processed the sale, I noticed the live stream viewership had exploded. People love watching wealth in action. The haters were still there, but their voices were drowned out by the sheer scale of my new reality. I was just picking up my new phone when the clerk suggested a case to protect it from scratches. I told her I didn't like them. They just felt uncomfortable and bulky in my hand. She kept pushing, mentioning discounts for bulk buys, while the live stream chat was full of people mocking me. These lemon essences were laughing, claiming I wasn't truly rich unless I bought a $1,000 case. I let them talk. Then I told the clerk I didn't need a case because I would just replace the phone. I asked for 5 of every color for the 11 Pro Max and added a high-end Mac to the pile. 20 phones in one go. The chat exploded, and even Xia Yu looked at me with complete disbelief. It felt good to flip the script. I loaded the gear into my car and headed back to Times Square. Now that I had millions in the bank, I decided it was time to treat myself to a luxury watch. I asked Xia Yu for recommendations. She suggested the most prestigious brands, Patek Philippe and Vacheron Constantin. We decided to visit Vacheron Constantin first, but as soon as we walked in, the atmosphere felt different. The store manager, Sister Li, saw the live stream and assumed I was just a fake looking for attention. She told her staff not to waste their time on us. It was clear she had already judged me. I pointed to a watch I liked and asked to see it, but Sister Li coldly refused me. She told me I had to pay for it before I could even hold it. I couldn't believe the logic. Then, a middle-aged couple walked in. Sister Li's attitude shifted instantly, becoming incredibly polite and welcoming. She let them handle the watches without a second thought, while I was left standing there, completely ignored. I looked at Xia Yu, and we both knew what was happening. I was being looked down upon. I stepped into the Vacheron Constantin store with Xia Yu, but the welcome we received was far from warm. The store manager looked at us with blatant arrogance, treating us like we didn't belong in a place like this. She told me they provide services based on customer levels, essentially saying I wasn't high class enough for her time. It was disgusting to see such a superiority complex over a few luxury watches. I could not stand the attitude. I started to get angry, but Xia Yu quickly pulled me away to avoid making a scene in public. As we left, I could hear a middle-aged couple laughing, calling us impetuous kids with no real spending power. We decided to try the Patek Philippe boutique instead, where the experience was completely different and far more welcoming. The clerk greeted us with genuine politeness, which was a refreshing change of pace from the previous store. Since I wasn't an expert on high-end timepieces, I decided to let the viewers in Xia Yu's livestream help. The chat was a chaotic mix of genuine advice and haters, or as Xia Yu calls them, lemon essences. One person recommended the 711, but another pushed for something far more exclusive and incredibly expensive. They suggested the 105th anniversary commemorative model, a watch priced at a staggering $17.5 billion. The haters in the chat started mocking me, claiming I was just pretending and could never afford such a piece. They thought they had me cornered, laughing at the idea of a youngster buying the most expensive watch in store. But I have always believed that you get what you pay for, and if it is the best, it is the one. I ignored the noise and walked straight to the window, staring at that masterpiece of craftsmanship and design. I looked at the shocked clerk and calmly asked her to bring out the 175th anniversary model for me. The look of total disbelief on her face was the perfect answer to everyone who had looked down on me. I looked at the watch. 17.5 million was a lot, but I had the assets to back it up. People had publicly ridiculed me. If I did not show my strength now, they would never stop looking down on me. With the Peninsula Hotel and the circuit in my pocket, a steady income was guaranteed. A watch was a small price. The live stream audience exploded. They could not believe I was actually buying the legendary 175th anniversary model. The store manager approached me with a gentle smile. She explained the actual watch would need to be shipped from Switzerland. She promised home delivery at their own expense. I did not mind. I just handed over my card and typed the password. The clerk trembled as she swiped the card. Even those used to seeing rich clients were stunned by the amount. As they removed the model from the window, a crowd gathered. Only 6 of these existed in the world. That is when I ran into Zhang Li, the manager from Vacheron Constantine. She had been cold to me before. Now, she was suddenly friendly, desperate to lure me into her store after seeing what I just purchased. I gave her a taste of her own medicine. I told her Vacheron Constantine was too high-end for me. I pointed toward a random middle-aged couple, suggesting she try her luck with them instead. The streamers loved it. Jia Xinyu looked relieved. She realized that having money was not just about buying things, but about the power it gave. We headed to the 6th floor to look for clothes. I grew up wearing budget brands, so I asked for advice. She suggested Versace or Armani. We decided to try Versace first, but we were stopped immediately at the entrance. The saleswoman pointed to a sign. It clearly stated that network anchors were not allowed to enter the store. Jia Xinyu turned red with embarrassment. The clerk looked at us with disdain, thinking we were just posing for the camera. I didn't want Jia Xinyu to feel belittled, so I encouraged her to come inside the store with me. After leaving the first shop, we headed toward Armani, hoping for a better experience for her. But we were stopped again. The staff told us that internet anchors were strictly prohibited from entering. It was absurd. They claimed that filming would disrupt their business and ruin the luxury atmosphere they curated. Jia Xinyu proactively offered to put her phone away, but the assistant remained cold and arrogant. They basically told us not to waste their time if we weren't actually planning to spend money. I wasn't angry, just disappointed by their fake sense of superiority. I decided it was time to leave. Just as we walked toward the elevator, a man in a suit rushed toward us in a panic. He introduced himself as Li Shucheng, the general manager of the entire Times Square shopping mall. He revealed that because I spent 17.5 million on a watch, I was now a diamond member. The silence that followed was deafening. The clerks who had just insulted us were completely stunned. They realized they had just chased away one of the wealthiest customers in the entire building. Suddenly, the arrogance vanished. The staff began apologizing frantically, terrified that they would be fired. Meanwhile, the viewers in Xinyu's livestream were loving every second of this sudden, satisfying reversal. Manager Li was furious, scolding the staff for judging people based on their appearance and profession. I didn't feel the need to dwell on it, so I told them it was fine and led Xinyu away. With the manager now personally escorting us, we visited some other stores and picked up a few outfits. As we finally headed to the exit, Manager Li noticed my car parked nearby. He gasped when he realized it was a Pagani Zonda, a masterpiece worth over 20 million. It seems my brief visit to the mall had left a permanent impression on everyone there. I just shrugged it off. To me, that $20 million car was nothing more than a basic means of transportation. Li Shucheng looked at me like I was insane. I guess the gap between our worlds was finally becoming clear. After leaving Times Square, I decided it was time to thank Jia Xinyu for playing along and helping me out. She had been so sweet, so I handed her a top-of-the-line iPhone as a token of my appreciation. She was stunned, but she accepted it with a smile. It felt good to give back to someone who was genuine. Once she was home, I set my navigation for the Shanghai International Circuit. I could hardly believe it was finally mine. 5 square kilometers of asphalt and speed. This place was going to be the foundation for everything I planned next. When I walked into the office, I overheard 2 receptionists gossiping about some mysterious rich kid named Qin Han. Apparently, he was the legendary emperor of Shanghai, a man of immense wealth and an even more mysterious background. I did not think much of it until he actually walked through the door looking every bit the arrogant elite. Qin Han did not even know who I was. He demanded the venue be cleared, treating me like an unwelcome intruder. The receptionist, Xiao Zhao, hurried me away, terrified that I might upset the powerful young Master Qin. It was amusing, really. She thought I was some random guy who was risking his safety by just standing there. I followed her to the 2nd floor to meet the manager, Zhou Haitao, who was already waiting for me. The moment I stepped in, Zhou stood up with absolute respect, welcoming me as the new president of the circuit. I could practically feel Xiao Zhao's jaw drop. The random guy she was pushing aside was actually her new boss. Joe handed me the business reports, but I told him to just keep things running as they were for now. I did not come here to flex my wealth. I came here to claim my territory and begin my ascent. With the Zhonghai International Circuit under my control, I have officially taken the first step toward my ultimate goal. I walked with manager Zhou to the viewing platform of the Zhonghai International Circuit. The sight of those grand curves made me restless. Since I acquired this racetrack, I also gained master driving skills. I couldn't pass up the chance to put them to the test. I told Joe to bring my car around. He nearly fainted when he realized I actually owned a Pagani Zonda. He is used to seeing Lamborghinis and Ferraris, but a Pagani is on a completely different level of wealth. It is simply inhumane. As we headed down to the arena, the roar of engines filled the air. 4 luxury cars screeched to a halt before us. Out stepped Chin Han and his friends. He looked furious, clearly thinking he still had the run of the place. Chin Han started barking orders at Joe, but the manager quickly corrected him. I am now the owner of the entire circuit. He was stunned. Acquiring this track takes billions of funds. He assumed I was just some rich kid using family money. Trying to save face, Chin Han played it cool and offered me a cigarette. He was smiling, but I felt his arrogance. I told him plainly that he wasn't really my opponent. That was the spark he needed to start a real confrontation. He pointed to his modified Lamborghini Aventador. He had spent millions on upgrades to ensure it was a high-performance beast. I reminded him that a car is only as good as its driver. That's when the challenge for a race was set. Just then, my silver Pagani Zonda roared onto the scene. The look of shock on Chin Han's face was absolutely priceless. He admitted the car was expensive but insisted his modified Lamborghini had the edge in raw speed and performance. We agreed to run 2 laps. His friends were convinced it would be a landslide victory for Chin Han's modified machine. They believe the modifications make the difference. They have no idea who they are actually racing against on this track. The roar of the engines filled the air as Zhou Haitao gave the signal. 3, 2, 1, start. I pushed the Pagani to its limits, leaping ahead of Chin Han's car within just a few dozen meters. The crowd was stunned. Nobody expected the strongest starter, young Master Chin, to be left in my dust immediately. Chin Han's friends weren't worried yet. They knew his cornering was legendary and the track ahead was full of turns. As we hit the corners, I didn't slow down. I pushed through the turns at a terrifying 130 miles per hour. I crossed the finish line a full 10 seconds ahead of him, leaving everyone in a state of absolute disbelief. Chin Han stepped out, his expression shifting from competitiveness to genuine admiration. He admitted defeat and wanted to know my secret. I explained the art of the start, from clutch control to RPM management, showing him how to squeeze the engine power. Impressed by my skill, Chin Han asked for my WeChat. We agreed to grab drinks and keep in touch soon. Just then, my phone rang. It was Ji Qingyan asking me to pick her up from her office. I told the group I had to go to work. Chin Han was baffled when I mentioned driving for Didi. Imagine his face when he realized I was using a Pagani as a rideshare car just to support my family. I drove to the Chaoyang Group parking lot, spotting my old, beat-up Shali and reminding myself to take care of it. Ji Qingyan arrived, laughing at my timing. We headed back to her villa, talking about her upcoming class reunion. I reminded her about a certain promise she made involving some special exercises, teasing her about her modesty. Once we reached the villa, she told me to help myself to the fridge. I went for an iced coffee. But as I opened the door, I found something unexpected. A dozen pairs of stockings chilled right next to the drinks. I was at Ji Qingyan's place when she caught me questioning why I put my coffee back in the fridge. She teased me, explaining that some women keep their stockings in the refrigerator to make them last longer. I used to envy her luxurious villa, but now that I own the entire Kyushu pavilion, it feels different. While waiting for her to shower, I borrowed her laptop to kill some time with a movie. That is when I noticed a delivery notification for some rather intimate black lace attire. Ji Qingyan practically flew down the stairs wrapped in a towel, desperate to snatch the computer away from me. I couldn't help but tease her, asking if she had secretly ordered an electronic boyfriend. She eventually got dressed for her class reunion, choosing an outfit designed to outshine every other woman there. Before we left, I reminded her that she still owed me 8 of those special S-shaped squats. She insisted I close the curtains first, fearing a repeat of her father's embarrassing public scandal. In the dimmed light of the villa, she kept her promise, showcasing a figure that put professional models to shame. Once she finished and put on her black stockings, we prepared to head to a 3-star Michelin seafood restaurant. Just as we were about to step out, I stopped dead in my tracks. I looked over to see 2 very familiar faces waiting in the yard, Ji Qingyan's parents. I stood there feeling a bit awkward as Ji Qingyan's parents suddenly appeared, both of them wearing huge, knowing grins. Her father, Ji Antai, was already convinced I was a great match for his daughter, mostly because of my height. Her mother, Song Minghui, was just as amused. It was clear they thought things had gone much further than they actually did. Ji Qingyan was absolutely mortified. She tried explaining that she had only drawn the curtains to change her clothes, but her parents weren't buying it. They told her it was normal for a girl her age and to just be safe. Before they left, her mother kindly invited me to her grandfather's birthday party the day after tomorrow. I didn't really want to go, but it is hard to say no to elders, so I just nodded and agreed. Once they drove away in their Audi, Ji Qingyan looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. Even in her state of total embarrassment, I still asked her to place a ride order through the app. She was annoyed that I was focusing on business, but she did it anyway. Some things are just a matter of principle. After dropping her off at the hotel, I noticed she left me a 5-star review for abiding by the rules. Suddenly, the system pinged. I had driven 100 kilometers safely, earning me 20 points of proficiency. Then came the real shock. My career completion reached 55% and my reward was 21% equity in Didi. I could hardly believe it. Just by driving, I had suddenly become one of the biggest bosses of a massive company. Meanwhile, at the Didi headquarters in Yangcheng, CEO Cheng Shuang was dealing with the fallout of this sudden transfer. The executives were stunned. Acquiring 21% of the company would normally cost at least 100 billion yuan. They had no idea who I was, only that I had handled the entire transaction over the phone from Zhonghai. To investigate, the CEO assigned Vice President Tian Yan, a sharp professional, to contact me and invite me to the city. I looked up the company's market value and realized I was sitting on a fortune. I decided not to sell. Why cash out when I can just collect hundreds of millions in dividends every year? It is like having a golden goose. With my career completion at 55%, I am nearly halfway to the big reward. I just need to keep going. Feeling satisfied, I set my GPS for Zhuzhou Pavilion. It was finally time to go back and check out my home. I was just about to stop taking orders for the day when my phone buzzed with a new request. Since the passenger was heading in the same direction as me, I decided to take the order without thinking. My system tasks and occupational proficiency are all tied to these orders, so every trip counts toward my growth. I drove towards Starbucks where a tall woman was busy taking endless selfies, obsessed with the perfect angle for her posts. She seemed more concerned with her social media image than the fact that her ride was taking a few minutes. As I pulled up, the street erupted in whispers. People were shocked to see a Pagani Zonda cruising through the neighborhood. I stopped right in front of her and asked if she was Ms. Zhu, using the tail number from the app. She looked stunned. Judging by her expression, she thought her carefully planned outfit had finally attracted a rich heir. She climbed into the car with an air of cautious curiosity, clearly thinking her life was about to change for the better. She tried to be reserved and polite, introducing herself as Xu Yang while hoping I would take the lead. When she asked why I chose her, I was confused. I told her she was the one who requested a Didi. The look on her face shifted instantly. She couldn't believe that a luxury sports car was being used for ride sharing. Once she realized I was just a driver, her sweetness vanished. She suddenly looked at me with utter contempt. She started bragging about her own high-end part-time work, calling my job a stinky little gig for the ignorant. I had enough of her arrogance. I slammed on the brakes, nearly throwing her across the seat in the process. I told her that her fake personality and plastic face were making me sick, and I ordered her to get out. She screamed and threatened me with a bad review, claiming that as a customer, she was a god. I didn't care. I kicked her out of the car and sprayed some perfume to get rid of her lingering scent. Sure enough, a 1-star review popped up on my phone shortly after, but that was the least of my worries. Then, the regional agent called me, screaming about the complaint and threatening to deduct my security deposit. He tried to intimidate me by threatening to suspend my operating qualification, thinking he held all the power. I just smiled. He doesn't realize that I am now a major shareholder of the entire Didi company. I warned him to think carefully about the consequences of his actions before he tried to block me. I headed over to Zhuzhou Pavilion to check out my new investment. The security guard greeted me warmly right at the gate. At my villa, I was met by Zhou Xuan, the property manager. He seemed incredibly eager to please me from the start. He was clearly flattered that I had bought 9 villas at once. He immediately offered to arrange a private housekeeper for me. I decided to skip the general tour of the grounds and went straight inside. The modern, simple design was exactly my style. Zhou Xuan started listing the materials used. Everything from the Alp stone to the mahogany was of the highest global grade. He He even pointed out the crystal chandeliers and pure gold powder on the railings. The level of luxury was honestly inhumane. I was surprised to find the kitchen fully stocked with basic supplies. The developers had clearly gone the extra mile for me. While we were inside, Zhou Xuan got a call. He had already screened several candidates for the housekeeper position for my review. Since I had some free time, I agreed to go to the property office and choose my new assistant in person. In the conference room, 5 young women were waiting. They each had a very different style and personality to choose from. It was obvious the management wanted to provide a wide variety of options to ensure I found someone who fit my preferences. Meanwhile, in the deputy manager's office, a man named Pei Hao was talking to a woman named Xu Yang. Xu Yang had arrived late after a heated argument with a rideshare driver which had left her in a foul mood. Pei Hao had a history with her and was using his influence to help her land this prestigious job as my housekeeper. Xu Yang was incredibly arrogant, believing no one else in the room could possibly compete with her beauty and charm. To her, this job was a golden ticket to a better life, and she was determined to secure it at any cost. Pei Hao led her into the meeting room just as I and Zhou Xuan walked through the door to begin the interviews. The moment our eyes met, Xu Yang's face twisted with rage. She recognized me immediately from our encounter on the road. Without realizing who I actually was, she shouted, calling me the stupid driver she had fought with earlier that day. Pei Hao looked like he had seen a ghost. He knew exactly how catastrophic her outburst was for her chances of employment. I didn't expect to run into Xu Yang here. From her posture, it looked like she was applying to be a personal butler. She didn't hold back, calling me a pathetic driver and questioning why someone like me would dare step foot in this place. Suddenly, Pei Hao stepped in and slapped her across the face, shouting that she had no right to speak to me that way. The shock on Xu Yang's face was priceless when Pei Hao revealed that I am actually the owner of the Juzhou Pavilion. She tried to backtrack immediately, suddenly claiming that I must be experiencing life as a driver despite my obvious wealth. I wasn't interested in her fake apology. I had Zhou Xuan escort her out, noting that the room smelled of green tea. With her gone, I turned my attention to the 5 final candidates selected for the butler position. None of them quite hit the mark for me. Their temperament just wasn't what I was looking for in an assistant. I sent them home with 5,000 yuan each as a gesture of goodwill, though the search for the right person continues. After a relaxing bath and some downtime, I got a message from Ji Qingyan asking for a ride from the hotel. I drove over to the Zhangtang Hailu Hui and waited in the lobby, killing time with a live stream on my phone. When the elevator opened, Ji Qingyan walked out with a group of her old classmates who seemed quite intoxicated. A man named Lin Yi tried to pressure her to stay, playing the role of her protective flower protector. Her friends warned her that ride-sharing was dangerous, especially for a woman as beautiful and striking as she is. Ji Qingyan simply smiled and told them that her driver was actually a friend, leaving them completely baffled. As she approached me, her female classmates were stunned by my appearance, whispering about how handsome I was. But not everyone was impressed. A guy named Wu Yongbo decided to take a shot at my profession. He sneered, suggesting that no matter how good I looked, I was still just a lowly driver who got lucky. I didn't let it get to me. I am not some sycophant, and I don't feel honored just for knowing Qingyan. Wu Yongbo continued to mock me, thinking he was superior simply because I chose to drive for a living. I stood there quietly while my old classmates talked over me, treating me like I was invisible because I drive for Didi. Then there was Lin Yi, a Harvard doctor who loved to remind everyone about his millions in venture capital and his luxury car. Wu Yongbo joined in, mocking my career and claiming I could never afford a vehicle like the Mercedes G-Wagon Lin Yi owned. The other women nodded in agreement, their words wrapped in a fake politeness that barely hid their blatant condescension toward me. I could tell Ji Qingyan was deeply embarrassed by their behavior. She looked like she regretted coming to this reunion entirely. As we finally walked out of the venue, the group spotted a white Mercedes G-Wagon with its lights shining brightly. Lin Yi bragged that the car cost over 2 million yuan, acting as if he had reached the pinnacle of success. But then, someone noticed another car parked nearby, a Pagani Zonda, which is essentially the ultimate dream for any car enthusiast. Lin Yi became an instant fanboy, reciting the specs of the V12 engine and the incredible acceleration of the supercar. He admitted with a sigh that a Zonda cost nearly 30 million yuan, far beyond what he could earn in a lifetime. I stepped forward and coughed to get their attention, asking if they were finished staring so I could get through. Wu Yongbo joked that I should be careful not to touch it, lest I be held liable for damages I could never pay. I didn't say a word. I simply pressed the key in my pocket, and the Zonda's xenon headlights flashed instantly. The gull-wing doors opened slowly like wings, leaving the entire group in a state of absolute, stunned silence. They were terrified that the owner was angry, until they realized the keys were sitting right there in my hand. When they asked how a Didi driver could own such a car, I told them not to let poverty limit their imagination. The look of sheer shock on their faces was priceless. Suddenly, I was no longer a failure in their eyes. As we drove away, I heard them speculating that I was a hidden billionaire using Didi just for the thrill of it. Ji Qingyan apologized for her classmates' snobbery, but I didn't mind. Their reaction was a small price for the entertainment. She felt a bit dizzy from the wine, so we decided to take a slow drive to help her sober up. To keep the joke going, she actually placed a Didi order on her phone, and I snatched it up immediately. My system task requires 10 5-star reviews to gain 10 proficiency points, which represents 10% of my career completion. I already have 6 reviews. With a few more successful trips, I'll be one step closer to mastering my new life. Humming a little song, I drove Ji Qingyan to the beach. The night air was crisp and the white waves looked stunning. Glancing to the right, I saw the Kyushu Pavilion. Most people drive for hours for this view, but I just opened a window. The life of the rich can be quite boring, but I enjoy the quiet luxury of having the ocean as my neighbor. Once we parked, Qingyan asked me to turn around. She wanted to take off her stockings to walk on the sand. We had some playful banter. She was being modest, while I teased her about the strange logic of women's fashion. I couldn't help but sneak a peek through the reflective window. The sight of her was captivating and incredibly elegant. We stepped onto the beach and the sea breeze caught her hair. She looked even more beautiful than the ocean itself. As we walked, she brought up something serious. Her father wants me to attend her grandfather's upcoming birthday celebration. She looked embarrassed, knowing I'd likely hate the formality. She tried to refuse for me, but her family insisted. The plan was set. I would pretend to be her boyfriend. I agreed to help her deal with her family's expectations. As the night air grew cold, we headed back toward her villa. On the way, she noticed something very unusual. The lights of the Kyushu Pavilion were all blazing. She was shocked because those villas are almost always dark. She explained that it's the most luxurious area in Shanghai, featuring rare plants and incredibly expensive swimming pools. I decided to have a little fun. I told her I would take her inside for a swim right now. She laughed, betting me that security would never let a stranger in, regardless of how expensive their car was. The stakes were tempting. If I actually managed to get inside, she promised me a reward that would feast my eyes. I drove straight toward the main gate. Qingyan was panicking, convinced I was about to be humiliated and kicked out. As we approached, a dozen security guards rushed out with serious expressions. Qingyan's heart was likely racing in fear. But instead of stopping us, the guards lined up in 2 perfect rows and gave me a formal, disciplined salute. The gates slid open automatically, welcoming me home. I could practically feel Qingyan's absolute shock from the passenger seat. I drove Ji Qingyan into the Kyushu Pavilion, which is known as the most high-security villa area in the city. She was completely stunned when the guards didn't stop us, but instead gave me a formal, respectful salute. To keep her guessing, I joked that they were just impressed by my Pagani, which left her totally confused. Once we parked, I invited her for a stroll. The area felt more like a tropical rainforest than a neighborhood. We passed lush fruit trees and a wide artificial river filled with rare, incredibly expensive imported koi fish. Then we came across a massive swimming pool, the largest outdoor pool in all of Shanghai, shimmering in the light. I couldn't resist teasing her about her promise to let me feast my eyes if I managed to get her inside. She was flustered and embarrassed, quickly making excuses about not having a swimsuit to get out of the deal. As we reached the doorstep of the house, I casually suggested that we go inside and take a look. Ji Qingyan was horrified, warning me that breaking into a private residence was illegal and incredibly reckless behavior. I just smiled and walked toward Villa Number 1, ignoring her protests as I reached for the electronic lock. The moment my finger touched the scanner, a voice announced, "Welcome home," leaving her absolutely speechless and staring. She looked at me in disbelief, finally realizing the guards hadn't saluted the car, but the actual owner. I casually mentioned I had bought the place yesterday, claiming the cost was somewhere around a few billion yuan. Since she works in real estate, she tried to correct me on the pricing, but I dropped a bigger bombshell. I told her I didn't just buy one house, I had actually purchased the entire Kyushu Pavilion complex. She was completely stunned, wondering why someone with that kind of wealth would spend time driving a rideshare car. Since it was already late, I invited her to stay the night and pick whichever room she liked best. She agreed, though she jokingly asked if I had any pajamas, which led to some lighthearted and playful banter. Ji Qingyan didn't bring any clothes, so I lent her some of my pajamas. She seemed a bit embarrassed, but she accepted them. As she headed to the bath, I could tell she was wondering about my background and where my wealth actually comes from. The next morning, I drove her to the company. She was happy, and I felt a sense of satisfaction in her praise. Right then, a notification popped up in my mind. My system progress had reached 8 out of 10 for the current task. Just 2 more orders and I would complete the mission. I wonder what kind of reward the system has in store for me. Feeling hungry, I drove over to the Peninsula Hotel. I wanted to grab some breakfast and check on how the staff were doing. Wang Tianlong, the manager, spotted me immediately. He offered to have the kitchen prepare something special, but I declined his offer. I wanted to experience the service as a normal guest. Since I own the hotel, it was the best way to observe them. The restaurant is run by a Michelin 3-star chef. It is a high-end place, though it was relatively quiet that morning. I noticed several girls at a nearby table whispering about me. It seems my appearance was drawing quite a bit of attention, but the mood shifted when I heard a familiar voice calling my name. It was Yu Lily, the woman Ji Qingyan had just fired. Of all the places to apply for a job, she chose my hotel. She didn't recognize me as the owner, of course. She immediately started insulting me, accusing me of sucking up to Ji Qingyan just to get her kicked out of the company. She called me a little white face, claiming I was nothing more than a toy for a rich woman. The other guests began to overhear and judge me. Their previous admiration turned into blatant contempt based on her lies. I just smiled. I wasn't interested in arguing with someone like her, so I told her to call Wang Tianlong over. Yu Lily smugly agreed, believing her connection with the manager would protect her and help her humiliate me further. When Wang Tianlong arrived, he didn't offer her any support. Instead, he exploded in anger, screaming at her for her ignorance. He revealed to everyone that I was the owner of the Peninsula Hotel and fired her on the spot for her behavior.